All right. Well, hello, Josh. How are you today?
I'm good, Kyle. How are you?
I'm doing good, and I'm excited to have our first Dispenza chat. I don't know what
Yes.
we're going to call this. I guess this is kind of a work in progress. But the other day we were chatting on the phone, and we were discussing doing this, and I'm excited to finally put it together. So I kind of wanted to get started by talking about our both of our transformational videos, and I can only speak for myself how it was very difficult to do it, to be honest and transparent, and wanted to do it to help other people, specifically men, in this dispensa work because there just wasn't much out there on male transformational videos. So you did yours as well. Do you want to kind of talk about that a little bit?
Sure. It was kind of the same deal. My first Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat was a scholarship from Give to Give for and Sacred Heart Foundation, which was I wrote in and applied for the scholarship as a veteran, as a military veteran, and the and then afterwards, they had asked if I would do a transformation video, and it took me some. When I came back, I was super pumped. Like I had like such a great experience, but I had so much information, so much experiences that I was trying to see how to talk about it and what to talk about and how to be vulnerable. And the biggest, I think the biggest, there was many experiences, but I think one of the biggest takeaways was my heart opening, and I had never experienced my heart like that. My heart just, it's kind of like I always knew that I loved people in my mind. I didn't know I loved them in my heart, and I always felt that there was like this disconnect with my emotions. And I think some of that is society, some of that's being a man today, some of that is there's many reasons behind that, but I didn't know how to get there, and that's what it helped me crack that open. And once it did, I had immense amount of joy. I felt vulnerable. It was a little bit frightening at first, but when I got comfortable, especially when I started talking to other guys, meeting you in Cancun, and being able to just like openly be kind of vulnerable, it made a significant impact, and it kind of made me decide like I want to live my life like this. And then, of course, when you leave the retreat, a lot of like kind of normal life or the illusion creeps back in, and then maintaining that heart space is really the work for me today. But I know it exists, and that was what I wanted to describe in my video. And then also just the healing. I realized we practiced several coherence healings, and those I participated every time as a healer. And then I kind of realized that all the energy in the room, like everybody's getting healed, and it didn't really matter. It was just like a collective consciousness and wholeness and oneness. And yeah, it was incredible to be really real and just open like that. And it kind of to take away the mask, take away the ego, take away the what I have, what you have, all of these different things, and just be like, hey, we're here. And yeah, it was great.
You covered a lot of topics that I'd like to kind of drill down in. I don't know if we'll hit them all today, but first of all, we'll put links in the comments for both of our transformational videos. If you're interested, you could check that out. But let's go back to opening your heart, because I was just thinking about that again this morning during my meditation. And almost all of the Dispenza meditation videos that you can buy on his website, they start off with either brain coherence or heart coherence elements. And sometimes it's both. And so I was thinking about the heart and how important that element is, to successful meditation. And success is a broad term, so I don't want to I don't want to make, any meditation that you do is really a successful meditation, because you're just doing the meditation. And that's something I personally got kind of hung up on, is because I'm a perfectionist type person. Uh, my characteristics are I'm a high performer, and so I'm like, okay, I want to be the best at meditation. And so I that was actually a hindrance for me, and I've had to work really hard to get my mind wrapped around what does a successful meditation really mean. And I think it's one where you really just let go, and you have no um, what am I trying to say, Josh? You have no preconceived idea of what's going to happen during the meditation, how you're going to feel during the meditation.
And
And
controlling the outcome.
yeah, trusting in the unknown is a subject that comes up a lot. And if you are having some kind of foreseen expectation when you start a meditation, then you're not really trusting in the unknown. But let's go back to opening the heart. I love the fact that you had that experience in Cancun, was it that you said?
Yes.
And I want to have you share just a little more about that, because I personally have not felt that. I hate, I don't know if it's the right word, but the heart orgasm where it's just like, boom, it's opening up. I feel it inside at different times in different ways. And I do feel like my heart is open, but it hasn't been that huge wow, aha type moment for me yet. Not sure if it'll ever happen. And I guess I'm trying to work through that in my own self to be like, I'm okay if it doesn't ever happen. But let's go back to you and your experience. Can you kind of walk us through? It was at the Cancun event. When during that event did it happen? And was it just like right away, immediate? Was there kind of a build up? Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, I think it was a build up. I felt I mean the initial part of Cancun is I felt very excited by the energy. I was very I'm a very I guess kind of an intellectual type thinker and stuff. So I liked all of the information that was coming to me from Dr. Joe. The everybody felt very warm and welcoming, and that's kind of where it started. And then somebody in the very beginning had told me uh, that I was worthy, and that kind of hit me because I was like, I never, it almost at my first, my ego was like, I'm worthy, but then I had to ask myself, do I really think that I'm worthy? And that kind of took me into a level of consciousness as Dr. Joe started working us through blessing of the energy centers. And he started talking about these energy centers, and I had really started to relate with them, specifically energy center 1, 2, and 3. And so one, for a guy, energy center 1 is my creative center. It's in charge of reproduction. It's in charge of creativity. It's that lower, root energy center. And a lot of times, guys, at least for me, for myself, I can speak that, I can relate with that energy center in my life. I can see where where it comes to play in my life. And it's not all good and it's not all bad. It is what it is.
It's the primary energy.
Yes. And then moving into energy center 2, which it has a lot to do with the digestive, but I relate it to Dr. Joe had said something to security and safety. So, when we eat food, we feel good. We feel, safe and secure that our bodies can function and operate. So one of the primary it has other roles and functions, but safety and security, and that's, living in a world that is safe. And
Peace.
that was a big deal for me, especially having a military background and some of the other things in my life. I didn't feel safe, even though everything around me could be safe. I didn't believe that I was safe. I was constantly in a vigilant type of stress or fight or flight. So I related number 2 to that I could feel safe. And then number 3 being my will. And my will, my ambition, my willpower was always very, very strong. But I felt like those 3 centers, for one, I didn't understand them. 2, they weren't balanced. And 3, I didn't know how to use them. And so once I decided that I was safe, and it wasn't just like a deciding that I was safe, it was a feeling, it was an energy in the room, something, in intuition that I'm safe. that I don't have to live. I believed that to be a good man, I needed to live in a constant state of vigilance, security, my ego up front, walls up, and guarding myself, completely guard. It wasn't just guarding my heart; it was like completely blocking it out. When I activated those energy centers through, blessing of the energy centers, because I believe we did that earlier in the week, and
Yeah.
then as we started going to it, I began to feel my heart. I began to feel four, and it just felt like a fuzz, like a little bit of fuzz in
Yep.
there. And then the more that we meditated, and I started hearing him say, I started harmonizing one, two, and three. I started nurturing my creative potential. I started nurturing my safety, that I'm safe. That because Dr. Joe talks about we can't get into a creative mindset until we're safe. So as long as we're in fight or flight, all my body is doing is it's either running, fighting, or doing nothing. and and that's just a constant process of over and over and over. And my brain doesn't think it's safe to create. My body doesn't think it's safe to create or to open up my heart. So once I got past those, as the week went, my heart kept just getting wider and wider. And it literally felt like the organ itself was swelling
Yep.
in my chest.
You feel
And
like
then,
pressure, almost like a
yes,
weird kind of pressure right in the middle.
yes.
Yeah, yep. I felt that too. Talk
And
go let's go back to you said they were out of balance. You said one, two, and three. Those first three energy centers were out of balance. How did you know that? Was it just intuition in meditation? Did you sense the energies out of alignment? Like can you talk a little bit about that?
yes, I always felt that I got, I have been kind of on I guess you could call it a spiritual journey for about 3 years. And there were some things that I could plug into, sometimes like higher energy centers, like I could plug into intuition, I could plug into different levels of awareness and consciousness, but I always kept kind of crashing down. I couldn't stay grounded. And I believe for me, grounded has to do with those lower energy centers. I was always in a fight or flight. I mean, it didn't matter if I got into a relationship and the whole time I'm in fight or flight mode. As I'm operating my daily life, I'm in this fight or flight mode, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't uh, change it. So I told you I had a military background. I had been going to, psychiatrists, therapists. They're talking to me about what's called this limbic brain, which is that be sometimes due to combat and combat stress. And it's not just, for combat, but in my case was combat. It kind of switches off to where it's not so much it's not, there's like basically a gap. Generally, when people have stress, they release a chemical like cortisol into their system, and then they can, once the stress is gone, most people, or some people, I don't know, but from what I hear is they can quickly transition from cortisol to no cortisol, and they can transition out of that. Well, I was kind of stuck in that. I couldn't, I was just, and I think a lot of people are actually stuck in that. It doesn't really have to do with combat, it can be with just anything. I think it's our society. But I was stuck in that and I couldn't get out of it. And then there were certain things that I didn't love about myself, and I didn't, I thought maybe this is bad, or I need to protect myself, or I need to be, I thought being courageous was being tough, but after meditation, I found courageous as being able to open my heart up and to be honest, to be rigorously honest, and to be vulnerable and to surrender the outcome. And that's uh, it. I've had some ideas. Like, it's kind of like pieces of the puzzle. It's like I've had this piece and that piece, and I couldn't really put them together, but it put it all together to me. And some of that, I didn't really understand why. I just didn't feel good. But in meditation is where I kind of realized for myself that yes, these lower energy centers are out of balance. I am operating kind of what the term like self-will run riot, and I couldn't. And Dr. Joe talks about our kind of like he kind of refers to it as like the dog wants to go for a walk, referring to my body. and my low and also my lower energy centers, right? It wants to eat, it wants to reproduce, it wants to go on a walk, it wants to exercise, it wants to be comfortable, it wants to sleep. Well, that's that's the animal part of me. And then there's this kind of, I guess, divine part of all of us uh that's trying to merge that. And I could definitely tell it one was running the show and it was way out of balance. And that's kind of where, when I got back, I was like, okay, my goal is to stay grounded, and my goal is to take care of these lower energy centers. And once I do, then they work in unison with my upper energy centers and my heart. It all works in harmony. But it's a practice. It's a practice. It's not a one and done.
Well, and we can talk a little bit about fight or flight. So, for those that may not be familiar, you mentioned combat experience, and that is a very definite, real thing, right? That's physical fight or flight. But I think for those that are non-military, we have similar situations, and even military, once they leave um, the military, they will also have similar life situations that can trigger fight or flight. And it could be as simple as trying to make financial decisions. It can be as simple as, we don't have enough money to cover the bills this month. It could be just the guy that cuts you off while you're driving because it just triggers that, and like you mentioned just a few minutes ago, so much of our society um, it triggers the fight or flight mechanism. Even social media, you could stretch as far as to say that social media has those same kind of characteristics, because people will get upset or offended when certain things are said about them on social media platforms. There's that wanting to be accepted in society, and we strive, to be accepted in society for whatever the reason may be, whether it's our looks, our financial status, um, and that creates kind of a fight or flight, situation. And I'm going to speak specifically for my own experience, that I used to care a lot about what people thought about me. And most of my actions, most of my behavior was always geared towards that. And that actually started when I was in school, back around third grade. My parents had moved. I went to a different school. I was the new kid in the school, and everybody hates being that person. And that really started a lot of bullying towards me, a lot of, different things that happened. And so it kind of triggered something on in my brain to where I wanted to do everything possible to be accepted, be the cool kid, whatever. And so for me personally, to open my heart and trust in the unknown is to basically say, I don't care anymore about what other people may think about me. Um, and I'm doing better at it. I'm not perfect. Now I have companies that I run, and there's a lot of financial decisions that I have to make for the company. Everybody and their mother should be aware right now of the economic situation that's going on, the world crises that are going on, and how it comes back to the home front, and can possibly impact decision making and impact what a business's performance. And it's been pretty difficult for me to really just kind of be like, whatever happens, happens. Um, I'm going to try to see if I can invite another man on. I'll share just briefly a story that he told me that kind of works into this topic. He was meditating. He's a Dispenza meditator. And he told me he was trying to manifest a new job opportunity within his current company that he was working for. And he really put a lot of effort in to the first part, which is the think box, putting all the information together on paper, all the details, what it was going to look like, and that sort of thing. And then he spent another 2 weeks or so in meditation, working for the manifestation. But he told me that there was a part of that process where he felt like he was going to lose his job. And that's another subject we can talk about today or another day, is just how when you start this work and you progress through this work, it does seem like things tend to get a little bit worse before they get better. But anyway, he was telling me that that was what was happening. And he said that he just didn't really care. He said, if I lose my job, I lose my job. Everything will work out. And that's been kind of a mantra that I've been practicing over the last few weeks to a month or so, is just that, whatever happens, happens. It's not going to be the end of the world. I've reflected back in the past over different life events where I did freak out. I did try to control the outcome. I put all of my, as Dispenza says, matter to matter, and was trying to correct and change an outcome or several outcomes that was surrounding a circumstance or an event. And while it was exhausting, um, in the end, whatever happened is what happened. And so now I'm trying to teach my kids the same thing. And it's, albeit probably less significant type events, but it's huge to them. In their mind, they're freaking out, they're worried about something, whatever. And I'm trying to teach them, hey, it'll work itself out. Let's sit down and let's talk about what we can imagine are the outcomes. It could be this, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, right? We lay out the outcomes for a certain event. And then I say, now, why stress and worry about it? It will work itself out. So I enjoy the topic of fight or flight. I don't think it's male specific. I think males and females have this in them. I can say my wife, for example, was in fight or flight mode for years, and it actually caused her to have adrenal fatigue, and it caused the body to start to shut down. So this is a very real, scientifically provable, albeit Western medicine doesn't really look at adrenal fatigue as a true serious condition. Albeit, I did talk to some veterinarians, and it is a very serious condition recognized by veterinarians. And I talked to one specifically, and she said, yes, animals can die from this condition. And I know my wife was very, very, very ill. And so over the years that we've been working through this condition for her, we were kind of talking about what things triggered her fight or flight. And I don't want to belittle it. And if I do sound like that, I apologize. But she would get very stressed out just coming home and seeing the kitchen a mess. She just spent all day dealing with work related things, dealing with the kids in school, and she comes home and she's tired, whatever time, 5:30, 6:30, whatever. And then she walks through the door and sees the whole kitchen a mess. In fact, she would say that she would have those same kind of fight or flight symptoms kick off when she would think about driving home and know that the kitchen was a mess and be like, oh crap, I'm going to have to deal with that when I get home. So it's not male or female specific, but I think the triggers are different. And so maybe let's hone this in, um, and just talk about self-actualization, um, how we can look inside our own selves and see what our personal triggers are. And then we can be awake to that and be prepared on how we would deal with that. Do you mind sharing some of yours, Josh?
Oh yes, like some of my triggers or some of
Yeah. Well, what triggers your fight or flight and how you cope with that?
yes. So, it has been it's kind of a self-discovery process. And I think it's okay definitely in the beginning, I didn't know what triggered me. I would just be, I guess,
Me.
triggered. And I didn't even know what, like, I couldn't identify it. And it's just taken, it's taken time. But all of them, they all boil down to me to fear. It always comes down to a fear. I mean, I could describe multiple situations that people might or may not be able to relate with, but it boils down to my fear that I'm not going to be okay, that I'm going to be alone, or that nobody understands, or that, it's kind of selfish, it's kind of a selfish thing, but I relate with that kind of stress of people, loud noises, not, not, fear of abandonment, not feeling comfortable in my own skin, not, wanting to be liked, wanting to be accepted. And as that kind of that self-discovery, realizing that about myself, and then kind of talking to myself. And yeah, on a regular basis, it's kind of that self-talk, right? Because I have this committee in my head that's like reaffirming all of these things, right? Like, so I see something and it's like, that voice might be, if it was the kitchen, that voice would be like, yeah, see, these people, they don't care about how you feel. They know that it's going to make, that's that voice going in my head. I feel very angry. I'm in fight or flight. I'm trying to react. Instead of responding, I'm reacting to situations. And it can get out of whack pretty quick. But the truth is that for me is that that we are, like Dr. Joe says, we are whole in parts and part of the whole, which to me is wholeness. And that it's okay. Everything is happening exactly like it's supposed to be. And sometimes I need to call somebody, like Kyle. I need to call Kyle. Sometimes I need to do a meditation. And definitely for me, doing meditation in the morning, like Dr. Joe says, overcome yourself when you get out of bed, and then you can overcome anything in the day. And that's true for me. I have to overcome myself. To meditate, to get centered, to get in what's known as coherence, and kind of to direct my thinking, and then go from there. And then opportunities are going to rise. Think life is going to happen. Cars are going to cut you off. Things are going to be said, but I found out for me that it's my perspective. If I'm believing that everything's bad, if I'm believing that the kitchen's going to be a wreck, if I'm believing that the world is this way, it's me, it's my thinking, and then it seems to basically manifest that way. And I found this practice to be uh the when I got out of the military, the VA put me on a lot of medications, and I kind of decided, this is kind of curving it a little bit, but I decided I didn't want to take the medications, that I wanted to try a different way than just regular Western medicine and pharmaceuticals. And this is the way. Meditation is the way for me, that I do not have to take those today. And that's part of that. But definitely being aware of myself, having, being honest. I guess there's three basic tenets to growth, and for me that's being rigorously honest, or rigorously authentic, um, to uh, get comfortable being uncomfortable, and to surrender the outcome. And if I can kind of stay in those three things right there, I there's a lot of opportunity for growth, and it keeps flowing in from so many directions. And I really wanted to say that there's hope to kind of get past some of these things.
So I'll start by sharing one of my biggest victories, and then I'd like to ask one for you. And I'll kind of preface this by saying, transformation videos are so awesome to watch. They're very motivational for me, and I know for other people. But I was thinking that we tend to watch them for big wow factors. And that was one of the biggest reasons why I delayed in doing my transformational videos, because personally, internally, I just didn't feel like I had something wow enough to share. And the coolest part about transformation is it's a process, and it's going to continue to happen. And while I don't have some kind of, I'm not in a wheelchair trying to walk, I don't have blindness trying to gain my sight, nothing like that. Sometimes, and those are big wow factors, matter to matter. But to me, I think the biggest wow factor that's going to happen is I can truly get into the unknown. I can truly trust in the unknown, and just relax, and just, go with the flow. To me, that is going to be huge. One victory I had was when we were talking about forgiveness. And I was considering what forgiveness means, and really trying to wrap my head around why forgiveness is so important in this work. Um, Number one reason it's important is because our vibrational energy must rise in order to truly get into the quantum field. And holding on to hate, resentment, and other issues around a event or set of events where we cannot forgive will automatically lower our frequency, and therefore we will not be as effective in getting into the quantum realm. Um, and the big epiphany moment that I had around forgiveness was that we are the author of our decisions. We choose how we are going to feel about something that someone or something did to us. And so if you automatically choose in the beginning to say, I'm not going to have an emotional event here, right? Somebody smacks you across the face. This is very extreme, but let's say somebody walks up to you and smacks you across the face. You have a choice in that very moment, whether it's going to be a nanosecond of time, but you're going to be like, do I choose to be mad at this person or not? And if you choose to be mad, then you have a negative emotion that must be forgiven by you, right? You created the emotion and you are going to have to be the one that needs to forgive. But the cool thing is if you can grow in maturity around the subject and say, look, I'm not going to even get mad or get angry in any kind of circumstance. Now, albeit the level of severity of the circumstance will dictate how you choose to feel. But, if you just say, look, I forgive you. Well, how am I trying to say this? You're just like, you know what? This person doesn't realize what they did to me. Therefore, I am not going to get mad at them. And then you have no reason to forgive them. And I'm still learning this, but it was just such a big wow factor for me. And here's a little bit of an exercise I did. We were just driving 2 days ago back home, about a 4 hour drive. And once we got into the heart of the bigger city we were driving through, it was amazing as I watched the drivers' attitudes change. They were just racing up to the rear ends of other cars. They were literally a few inches in front of a bumper when they're changing lanes. And I was following someone else on this route we were going and watching all of this happen in front of me to the person I was following. And it was amazing to me. I was just trying to get into the heads of the guy that was doing the cutting off or doing the tailgating. And I was just trying to imagine, like, wow, they're in a hurry for some reason, right? Or they're just not right in their head. They're in fight or flight mode. They're mad about something else and they're taking it out on the road like a lot of people do. And when I started to envelop my consciousness around what's going on with those other people, it totally put me in another perspective. I was just like, okay, I'm not going to get mad. What's the harm in just backing off a little bit and letting that car go, and again, a small example, but it's very real life to a lot of people. And it's just, I guess you could say it's kind of fun for me. And it was a huge release of a lot of tension that I was carrying. It's just like, these people don't really understand what they're doing and how it's impacting someone else. And therefore, I should not get mad at them. And then I don't have anything to forgive. I mean, I used to carry a lot of that crap with me every day that happened. And sometimes multiple days, it would just carry with me. So anyway, enough about me. Josh, how about you? Did you have a great victory?
Yeah, yes, just the from the first event, and it continues to grow, but it was just, I mean, I guess it was just the obsession in my mind. It was like I got, it's like I heard, I almost had this belief, and this was just a belief inside my own head that I needed to identify with my past, that I needed to identify with, certain traumatic events that I considered traumatic, and I needed to basically, every time I exhibited a specific behavior, then I needed to bring up that traumatic past to validate my behavior. And then it's like I had to carry those wounds around with me, and like, in constantly showing people these wounds. And that basically, and they said, Dr. Joe, and a lot of people in the program, and have, or in the meta, in Dr. Joe work, talk about the same thing, to quit telling yourself the same old story. And that when I got home from Cancun, it was like I was telling the people, like, I'm healed. I was like, I'm healed. And they're just looking at me, because I knew it wasn't like I had this miraculous, like, like I couldn't walk and now I can walk. It was I realized that I don't have to keep telling these stories. I don't have to keep obsessing about this. I can talk about it like in this format. I remove the emotion, and then it's just a memory, which is wisdom. And I can talk about it in a sense of wisdom. But you don't, if you meet me on the street, that's not the first things out of my mouth, about a lot, my past. I get to be free today. And so that was the biggest, that I was released from that. Now, a few times I've tried to put it back on, because as you're starting this work, as you pave this new neural pathway, the energy likes to travel the path of least resistance. So it likes to go back down the old path. But it's in practice, it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So basically, I'll go about 5 or 6 days, no obsession, no thoughts, and then I'll have like one day back to that, and then I've got to get back in it, and then then it starts stretching out maybe 8 days, and but regardless, I know I don't have to be what my environment or my conditions were. I also realized that trauma, life is traumatic, birth is traumatic, so it's not a bad thing happening. Nothing's trying to get me, it's just the way how we experience life in contrast. And I can change my personal reality. And that is that's the biggest takeaway that I felt healing from, that that I'm free. And so
Freedom, true freedom,
freedom.
freedom from our own selves.
Yes. And nobody telling me to change, me choosing for me.
That's right. We are the author.
Yes.
Well, we've got 2 minutes left. Fantastic so far for both of us. We wish the best for everyone that's watching this. Any help that we can be, we would love to offer that assistance in any way, shape, or form possible. We were talking on the phone briefly before this recorded call, Josh, that Joshua's going to he's already set up a YouTube channel, and of course this is on the Salty 7 YouTube channel, and we're going to contribute any funds that these channels generate to helping other folks either learn about Dispenza's work or be able to eventually go to a Dr. Joe retreat. So we're real excited about that. What say you to conclude, Josh?
Yeah.
Put you on the spot, bro.
Yeah. Thank if you guys want to see my video, it's Joshua Whiteland. You can look up my link it, or my YouTube. And this is really cool. It worked out really good.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you later. Thank you, Josh, so much for chipping in.